We're talking with Nancy Pearcey. She's authored Saving Leonardo while serving as a research professor of worldview studies at Philadelphia Biblical University. All the hoopla, Nancy, about the burning of the Koran and the rest of it. After all, I mean, when you're talking about a Bible or you're talking about a Koran or you're talking about a flag, it's just a thing. Do you think that people get too fixated on the things out there and not really what the word or the flag or whatever it is symbolizes?
Well, yes, in a way. It would be much more effective not to burn the Quran, but read it. Just do a public reading. Read all the passages that call for killing of the infidel. I think that would have a much greater impact. Don't treat it as a symbol. Look at what it actually says.
Well, this guy down in Florida, I mean, people were saying, well, it's going to cause all sorts of mayhem and backlash and violence and the rest of it, which I agree it was going to, but we're not getting at the root of the problem as to why these people become violent because some guy with 50 people in his congregation decides to burn a Koran. That really is the problem, isn't it? I mean, the way people react, the radical Islamists, the way they react to this. I guess my question to you, too, are these people radical, or is this the way the mainstream Muslims react to things like this?
Well, I don't think it's mainstream, but it doesn't take very many radicals to change the whole nature of the debate. You see, America has always welcomed anyone who's willing to assimilate to its national character. But radical Islam rejects assimilation. It's bent on the conquest of our national character. And I imagine you're up on this. You noticed the Larry King Live, where the imam who's founding the Cordoba Mosque in New York City has now started using the same threatening language. He's saying if that mosque is moved to a different location, anger will explode in the Muslim world. It will cause danger to our national security. So now there are these thinly veiled threats coming from not just about the Quran burning, but now about the mosque. So the deeper question we have to ask is, why has America become vulnerable to this kind of fear-mongering? And I think it's because of the secularization of the public square has created a vacuum that they're finding ways to exploit.
Now, I've maintained that these people that own the property, they can build a mosque if they want to. I think that people are a bit overreacting on that. I understand the worry about Sharia law and things like this, but I think it's, right. You know, I've often said it's like the Tom Cruise movie, The Minority Report. I mean, I think they're trying to convict people of crimes before they actually happen. If, in fact, they were to build a mosque or a community center or whatever, and then start running Sharia law out of there or fomenting terrorism out of there, then we would naturally have a problem with that, and we put a stop to it. But do you think that the people that are reacting to the mosque and the rest of this, are they playing into the hands of the terrorists who want to create this anger? They want to create this animosity. They want to create this backlash.
Well, it all depends on what they intended when they decided to found the mosque there.
I think they're being quite provocative to do it. I think they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, if they are intending it as a sign of victory, then we need to treat it that way. For us to say, oh, well, no, it's really about inter-religious peace and blah, 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 multiculturalism and so on, then we're being willingly blind. I think it's an objective question. What do they intend? What do we know that they intend by it? And I think that Raouf, the imam who's founding it, has tipped his hand when he's now turning it into a threat, and when he's saying, I'm now going to, hold a knife to America's throat with subtle threats of violence and death and so on. I think that sort of tips his hand, that is their intention, and it would be, unwise for us to stay blind to what their intentions really are.
So what do we do about that? I mean, we have the constitutional question of whether they are allowed to build the mosque because they own the land and freedom of religion and all of that. But we do know that at least radical Islam out there is trying to spread that ideology, and they're trying to spread Sharia law. What is it that we can do as citizens to combat this kind of stuff?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert on the law and what is legally allowable and so on. But I think that the broader issue that it raises for us is that it reveals to us that, well, Islamization is coming to America, and that's what we have to decide what we are going to respond to is the larger question. If Islam rejects assimilation, radical Islam rejects assimilation, if it's bent on bringing Sharia law, getting rid of our national character, the traditional American freedoms and liberties and so on, Then the deeper question is what has made us vulnerable to that? Why are we giving in to fear-mongering? European countries largely have, as you know. But what is, and of course they're far more secularized than America is. So I think there's a direct connection. At the birth of our nation, the American founders recognized that politics is a profoundly moral enterprise. It's the pursuit of moral ideals such as justice, fairness, and the common good. As James Madison said, the goal of government is not just to protect individual interests, but to secure the public good. But what we don't realize is that's no longer taught in our universities. In the in the political science departments of our universities today, they no longer teach that politics is based on morality. They now say, well, morality, science is objective, but morality is just a matter of personal values, your private preferences, and that people who say that something's in the public interest, it's just a way of dressing up the fact that that's their personal preference. Well, if that's what our politicians and lawyers and others are being trained in, the elite classes are being trained in, no wonder they don't have a moral base for dealing with threats to our national interests and our national character, like radical Islam.
Well, and you've compared this to people who were burning the Da Vinci Code because they didn't want to really delve into what that was. Of course, that was fiction, but there were elements of truth in it. So you're saying that instead of burning the Quran, we should actually be reading it, learning about it, and understand what it's all about.
Good point. You got it right there. That's it. And the example was not it was not actually somebody burning, but it was an evangelical radio personality who, when the Da Vinci Code came out by Dan Brown, told his listeners to take the book and throw it in the trash. To which I say, that's not the way to become a critical thinker. That's not the way to deal intelligently and openly with another set of ideas that you may disagree with.
Well, some people are afraid to learn about these ideas. They're afraid to be exposed to other things because for some reason they think they may fall under its spell.
Yes. Well, and my new book, Saving Leonardo, where I tell that story, is all about how to recognize ideas when they come through stories like Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. When they come through stories and images and plot and characterization, how do you detect those ideas and how do you resist and arm yourself so that you don't just fall into the spell? The whole purpose of the book, Saving Leonardo, is about teaching people the tools to recognize ideas when they come to us indirectly through art and culture and movies and TV and so on.
So we need to delve into this, learn more, and there's no harm in learning about things that we may disagree with.
Yeah, I think every home should have a Quran, and they should be reading it. And the other thing about it is, how are you going to help people who are under the spell if you don't know anything about it? There's also that angle. How can you help those who are trapped in these destructive, life-denying worldviews if you're not educating yourself on whether it's radical Islam or whether it's some of the more destructive secular worldviews that are here in America? How are you going to help people out? How are you going to resist it effectively?
Well, you've studied this for a long time, and religions in general a long time. Do you think there's such a thing as a peaceful Muslim?
Oh, yeah. I mean, historically, certainly. But the only trouble is this. To be a peaceful Muslim, you have to be inconsistent with the teachings of your religion.
Right.
And so you can be inconsistent. Sometimes we're happy that people are not totally consistent. If you were totally consistent with the Quran, I think that you would have to be trying to kill the infidel. It certainly is all through the Quran.
But we've seen places like in America, like in Dearborn, Michigan, which has a high concentration of Muslims. Have you seen them taking over city councils and instituting Sharia law? I mean, is that really a valid fear?
Yeah, well, you see, I think all people are made in the image of God, and that there's a lot of basic humanity at the heart of everyone, despite what they may believe. And like I said, if they can be, the more true they are to the nature, as they are created in the image of God, the more they will be inconsistent with their worldview or their religion when it's not consistent with religion, with Christianity. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying that the Muslim person who's inconsistent with his beliefs, but who is consistent with who he is as a creature made in God's image, And that's, unfortunately, that's what many Muslims are, and especially when they come to America and they absorb the American ethos, which is what they do. They come here. That's the whole point, right, of assimilation, is that you absorb the American ethos. You absorb the
We thought, but we got a lot of people. I mean, we got illegal aliens and doing the same thing. They come and they want to supplant their own culture and their own country in ours.
Right, and again, it's all. And I keep going back to the fact that it's partly because we've lost our self-confidence. So many of the basis for the freedoms and the liberties that we enjoy here in America was what? I mean, it's captured in the Declaration of Independence. Rights are inalienable. Rights are secure only if they're endowed by the Creator. So any worldview that denies that transcendent source ends up without a sufficient base to protect human freedom and dignity. And so as our culture has become more secularized and has given up that basic premise of the Creator, we've lost our self-confidence. We no longer, there are many Americans who literally think, no longer think that America is exceptional, that America has something special to offer. And as a result, they're not prepared to defend it, and they're very likely to lose it.
Yeah. Where can they go to learn more about you, Nancy?
Well, I have a new book out called Saving Leonardo, and you can go to our website. It's called PearceyReport.com, PearceyReport.com, and you can check out my new book. You can, my husband, Rick Pearcey, who is a former managing editor at Human Events, is the publisher, and you can learn about him. You can order the book through the website, and PearceyReport.com is a good place to go.
All right, Pearcey, right. Pearcey Report. Dr. Nancy Pearcey, appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Phil. Good talking with you.
Good talking with you.